my cellar one more time. And as you can see, it's still hotter than hell outside and colder than hell in my basement. The price we pay. All right, let's begin, shall we? I have a number of interesting places we're going to go tonight. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of spending the afternoon with Rose Estes. Great lady, liked her a lot. One of the things she told me was how the Endless Quest books almost never happen. How her boss, Kurt Whippling, or something like that, I'll bet it was Will Niebling, was against it, finally telling her, if you want to do this so bad, do it on your own time. So she did. The rest is history. So my question to you is, were there any other great ideas proposed that you know of that never made the cut? Tizar never seemed to turn anything down, wood carving kit, etc., so it seems weird that they would nix ideas like the Endless Quest books. Was there an idea that you would have loved to see come to fruition but didn't? Well, your sequencing's a little out of whack here. They didn't start licensing wood carvers and crap, until after. It's my understanding that the Endless Quest books predated most of that other schlocky crap that they licensed. If it was Will Niebling, that wouldn't surprise me in the least. That he would not see the possibility in it and would actually have the chutzpah to tell somebody to work on it on your own time. I hope she told him in a very graphic manner to shove the smirk on his face right up his ass with his head intact. Anyway, I have some opinions about Will Niebling, and that wouldn't surprise me. As for anything else, I have no idea. It didn't appear to me that after the Endless Quest, the book started and that they failed to license anything. I mean, it just, they hit it all, schlock or not. So nothing that I know of in that regard. Nice. Scrolls are great one-shot magic items for wizards. You're right. They are. And it helps out lower. Another great idea for low-level wizards, if you want to help them gain an equal footing or at least survive the first couple of times they go out, is items with charges. With limited charges, of course. Wands can have limited charges. Amulets can have limited charges. Rings can have limited charges. And maybe they're a one-shot. Maybe it's a couple times. Don't want to make them real powerful. In this case, I would lean more toward the defensive and saving my ass than I would being a big, powerful badass lobbing balls into fireballs into the enemy camp. One extreme to the other. All right. I'm going to read this as it was presented to me. The to-hit roll is parenthetical to indicate a dice value, which inflicts damage after all adjustments in armor are considered. This simplified form reduces the probability of damage occurring as the protections increase. You're 40% less likely to take damage wearing plate mail than running around in your bathrobe because plate mail reduces your armor class by 8 points. Yes. Okay. However, you can wrap your head around it as to what they are and how they work, etc. There's a couple of other ideas in here, equally valid. It's your world, it's your mythos, and therefore your call to make. Okay, to Tim Ahoy. Question: burrows and boulets or a monster by any other name. To my mind, the holy trinity of monsters invented by the creators of Dungeons and Dragons are, in alphabetical order, beholders. Yes. Absolutely makes any player's blood run cold. And Terry Kuntz gets all the glory for having invented the beholder and scaring the bejeebers out of tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of player characters, but not the players. Well, the players also, but I mean, yeah, a lot of lot of deaths. Boule, thank you very much, and the gelatinous cube. To me, these are the three most recognizable invented monsters from D&D. At the time of launching D&D, dragons were an obvious choice for reaching as wide as an audience as possible. Burrows and Boulets would not have had the same impact. Not to mention you had not yet invented them at the time of the first books. Yeah, actually, the name Dungeons and Dragons came up. You can find this probably in some of Gary's writings. As I recall, it came up around a family playtest session, and they were bouncing names around, and one of the kids hit it, but they all go, "Oh yeah, that's the one," and no, I don't remember a lot of the other possibilities, or the other ones they bounced around. And of course, sure, dungeons, everybody knew what a dungeon was. Dragons. So, sure, dragons were natural. And also remember that this was the very beginning of the effect, what I call the Tolkien effect. The Tolkien books were out, bootleg copies, and I think they were Ballantine bootlegs in all the head shops and comic book stores, such as they were back then. Dragons were never far from anybody's imagination. Everybody knew what a dungeon was, or they had a vision of it. It was just euphonious. It was catchy. And that's what you gotta have. Which of the many invented monsters from your time at TSR do you feel fondness for that could maybe do with a higher profile? Bugbears. I don't know why, but I've always liked bugbears. Are the monsters that were invented specifically for D&D during your time at TSR wholly original, or are they more like variations on mythical creatures? I really couldn't. To say it's a variation on a mythical creature is to say, in other words, inspired by, adapted from, ripped off of. Good grief! When the Catoblipas was submitted to Dragon Magazine, I thought, whoa, what a weird thing this guy invented, and only to come to find that there were other. There were possible places where the inspiration came from, and that's not in any way negative. But the lowering of the head that only raises up, the baleful glare, etc., etc. Well, there's some Celtic mythology that has something similar along that, and I think there's a Breton tale that has something like that. Which invented monster do you think of as the most original? Oh, absolutely the Beholder. Terry had no toy to go off of. He had no. There wasn't anything else similar to it that he could extrapolate from and take it to another level. Um, I think I think it's really hard. If you were to have a runoff, I think the Beholder would come out on top as being a totally original idea. Now, there again, Terry may have read some books about a floating eye. Yeah, it's like I say about Appendix N. Appendix N was the books that we read, and how each of our individual brains mutated and blended in all the things out of that appendix. I don't know. I don't know what all Terry wrote, or read, rather, that perhaps I didn't read. Maybe there is something that, a baleful eye, a single eye floating, yeah, that's in a whole lot of different stuff. But with eye stalks that all had different powers than that, that was pure Terry, as far as I know. What percentage of invented monsters are created to solve a perceived issue in the way the game is being played by the hoi polloi of gamers? Well, we never thought of them as the hoi polloi. That's kind of a derogatory term. The boule was specifically invented, and there were buffs over the time. I'm not even qualified anymore on making up a list of them. Many of the creature feature things that were submitted to Dragon were created to fill perceived needs or voids. And, coming from so many different people, I couldn't begin to guess all their inspiration. Let's see. Name your pick for the most aesthetically pleasing invented monster from your time. Well, I don't know that aesthetics come into it. If you want to get down to visually horrifying, it's hard to beat the Beholder. Especially if you've had, even your toe dabbled into the brook of adventuring, you'd probably heard of these things. It would be fun to get a bunch of 9-year-olds who hadn't read any of this stuff and get to play all this stuff new for them again, or 11-year-olds or whatever who hadn't read all of it already before they started playing. That'd be fun. Do you have any comments on the plethora of monsters available, and what do you think the main function or variety of monsters serves in gameplay? I think there's way too goddamn many. Way too many. Why do you need all these? Shift. Why do I think they're there? People kept inventing monsters so that the other players didn't already know everything there was to know about them when they encountered them for the first time. All right? I think in some cases it was laziness. Just because in my campaign you ran into goblins once before, don't expect every goblin you run into to be the same, to act the same, to be as strong or as weak. One clan might be a little buff, and another clan might be scrawny, and one clan might have a skill or an ability. But too many people couldn't see that possibility. Hobgoblin. That's what it is. It's a hobgoblin. Well, you could have had lots of different kinds of hobgoblins, different cultures, different. But no, hobgoblin, so many hit dice, average hit points, average damage it can inflict. So you're going along, open a door. What do I see? A room full of hobgoblins. Okay, quick calculation. We can take them. We got 3 times as many hit points as they do. Open the door. What do you see? Bunch of large, furry, bipedal creatures holding cudgels. Oh. Something new. All right. Same thing. A bunch of hobgoblins. Rather larger than usual. All of whom appear to be carrying large, knobby clubs with spikes sticking out of them. Well, maybe these hobgoblins aren't your average hobgoblin. But again, it was easier to find a new monster and try and stay one step ahead of your players. If they hadn't seen it before, they didn't know what it was, DM had an edge. Weaker DMs had an edge. Also driven by a demand for variety by the players. Is there a D&D equivalent to Bear Mace, a universal monster mace? If so, what is it? The innate ability to point your finger at something and shoot a thermally devastating bolt of fire out of your finger. No, there's no bear mace. But hey, if you had that ability, 1600 degrees, reasonable range, yeah, that's bear mace with a enduring sword. Yeah, mostly fatal. I like to think of hit points as grit, how much a person can take before they simply fall down. They don't so much take damage as get worn down till that one final attack catches them. Bingo! Right on the core original value. Avoiding the fatal blow, the last blow. The last blow is always, the last one is generally deemed fatal if it kills you. My question for this week. I was drawn into a bit of a strange debate. A DM shared a story online about how a new player, after a session, came up and gave him a browbeating for using accents. They told him that they shouldn't do any that weren't from his heritage, whilst lumping every European group into one heritage. Now the DM explained that they were quitting being a DM and running the game. They explained the level of effort that they put into making maps, planning games, research, listening to dialect coaches, etc. Guy sounded truly earnest. I suggested that the polite thing to do was to ask the player to leave the group that was not a fit for them. This was rebuked by some as not being polite. Am I crazy? No. Right here. New player in a group. So obviously the group has been going on. So obviously the group's tastes have already had a bearing on the game. The only time I've ever done any kind of accent or anything at the table, one time at a convention, I slipped into something that was like parcel tongue, in that I did a really, really good snake. I've never done it since. I haven't tried. I so surprised myself. I said, I can't possibly do a better snake. And I did. I haven't tried. I I don't do accents myself. I don't do voices. I do everything in my voice. I know that there are DMs that really get into the voices. There are groups that enjoy the voices. If this is a group that enjoyed the voices prior to this time, and this new guy sees fit to come in and lecture the DM about how he ought to or not ought to, number one, who the hell's this new player? Do you need him that badly? Do you need him at all if that's the attitude? If he doesn't like voices, he doesn't have to play in your game. Voices are part of your game, then he accepts them and shuts his pie hole. If he doesn't like them, I absolutely would offer him the opportunity to leave the group and find something else. And anybody, I would, oh God, I would relish the chance for somebody to come up to me at a convention and tell me I'm culturally, I'm misappropriating somebody else's culture. Yeah. Okay. Bill Murray said it best in Stripes. We're a nation of mongrels, and we're better for it. All right. No, you're not crazy. That's the guy to leave. First time hearing about other people, other DMs giving scrolls to first magic users. I did, but I gave them cleric spells requiring the magic users to make a contact outside his normal community. They then trade. Also, good opportunity to introduce the party cleric to the party. Then hired the magic users. All my magic users were pretty much one-shotters. If he came back alive and wealthier, then he'd settle down for more study. But he'd be able to recommend another mage type to the core party, and the cleric would become attached to the party, striving for one convert. This is also kept, I understand that, that clerics are, get brownie points with their deity for making conversions. Well, I can't imagine, I really can't envision somebody saying, oh yeah, my player character will, without some, I will, we will worship the yellow striped baboon, unless there was some material advantage to be gained for the player. So I've never really understand the conversion. Now, letting the cleric go into a village or a town or a city and seek to make converts, fine. No problem. You can have a lot of fun with that. Forcibly making converts along the trail? Repent or else? Nah. Sounds too much like the conquistadors of the Catholic Church. Okay. Well, that is an interesting idea. It does make for more background play that's done either as an aside or abstractly. Let's see, this guy goes, it's a long one. All right. This also kept my one guy that wanted to play a magic user making different PCs with different foci, so that by the time his chain of PCs were 5th level, he realized he definitely wanted to be a diviner rather than an acid wizard he chose initially. Acid wizard. I don't have no idea what the hell that is. Yes, I was grooming him to be a sub DM, especially with differing familiars, so he'd learn about he'd learn to be playing assorted NPCs at simultaneously. Okay. That was so long ago, 20, 34 years. I miss playing, especially DMing. Yeah, I've heard that one before. How they miss it. And it's a shame for some of the people that had to give it up. All right, yeah, some of the fun things of being a DM. I dodged the sound. Franz, why is there a wizard covering his ears while talking? Oh, geez, Aracraca. Owls, falcons, songbirds, raptors. Why not goose or duck or emu? Not sure. Um, Totally random input. One of my larger cities, with a preponderance of halflings, has feet beards with an entire industry of foot beard groomers. As well, shamanic healer halfling women generally practice foot reflexology using meridians to speed healing. Okay, whatever floats your boat. Yeah, it'd probably be the old. There's so many campaigns I'd like to sit up on as a fly on the wall and listen to what goes on without their knowing I'm there, so it's totally uninhibited. That sounds pretty funny. All right, here's another opinion or approach to hit points. I've tried in the past to concerted booze to make whatever you roll over to hit is the damage inflicted. I was just tired of telling newbies at the teaching table at the library which dice they need to roll for damage. Plus, everyone wants to roll each dice separately, too. Okay, you're attacking, you're using your sword with advantage. Roll two d20s and a d6. No, don't add them together. Yes, the cube and the round one. So the armor is hardness rather than difficulty, such that 10 hits, but such that the 10 hits, but is deflected, blocked, absorbed, avoided in some combination. Not worth qualifying. What made the strike fail to land? Yeah. A guy on YouTube doesn't use the word slave. He calls them interns. Yeah, he's not original. I believe Jolly Blackburn way back in like the Bag World series made that distinction in the Knights of the Dimmer Tale, as I recall. Yeah, it made him laugh. Well, yeah, and yes, the book that I talked about was Perilous Times by Thomas D. Lee. Now, I did not. Nobody sent me a copy of this. I'm beholden to no one for this. I checked it out of my library. And it is a fascinating, fun read involving immortality and Arthurian legends and global warming. And it's fun. I highly recommend it. Thanks for the reminder. Thanks for the responses. I'm a lot more curious about trying Thaco. I've got some old rule books around here. If I can convince my players to try a system with Thaco, I'm going to see about pulling them through a module as a side game. Well, you can just Thaco is simply different math. And, you don't have to start a brand new game. Just, the comet passed a little close last night, and now we're using the Thaco system from now on. Anyway, that's one way to do it. Do it. Okay, and so he asks any folks in the readership or in the listening ship or the audience have any comments on module recommendations. Okay, and okay, so we got a couple of responses here. My favorite low level modules of all time is N1, Cult of the Reptile God, or T1, Village of Hamlet. Both can be deadly. Fair warning. T1 should take less sessions as there is no built-in mystery to solve. It takes a little more DM skill to pull off a mystery, but N1 delivers if you can do it. If you do go for N1, don't share the name of the module with your players, as it's kind of a spoiler. Well, yeah, I guess it would be Cult of the Reptile God. And that's a current problem. Yeah, that problem's been there since we started writing modules, and before that, Judges Guild was publishing Great Adventures, and that is, as a DM, you want exclusive access to that kind of material that the players can't see in advance, so the rotten little buggers can't know everything that's coming down. Once again, I cite the Knights of the Dinner Table. They've got a player that I don't believe would last all that long at my table. They'd probably have a brain aneurysm. Let's see. Okay. As far as Stako, I get my modern players to use Stako because it's not something they need to know. Yeah, there you go. They roll the dice, add their modifiers, tell me what they got. I take the PC Stako, subtract them. Yep, there you go. Bingo. Subtract. Yep, did a hit. Yes. That's the system that mentioned earlier about the number of points beyond the needed to hit. Really is kind of tough. If you're trying to roll, say 17s, well, it's hard enough to roll that 17. To only give a couple of points of damage because you rolled a 19. No. 17, 18, 19, or, well, we won't call it 20 because everybody treats 20 different. That's full potential for damage, however many dice it is, whatever. Okay, back to this one. Kind of hopping around tonight. Yep, they don't need to know. The people that play in my Wheel of Blame don't know it, but I use Stako. I know what they have to. I have all their PC stats, the pre-gen stats in front of me, so I know exactly what any of them need to hit. And the beauty of Stako, in my opinion, is that they know. Let's say that they know that with their skill and that weapon, they can hit an armor class 0. All right, because I use descending. 9 is the bathrobe you're wearing. They know that they can hit a 0 on a 15. And they're rolling 17s and not hitting. They roll a 17, he goes, sorry, didn't hit. Okay, that immediately gives them an idea that now they're dealing with enchanted armor. If they're fighting a human, or if they're fighting a monster, something really special. And that adds more mystery and detecting work to the game for the players to figure out exactly what it is that's going on. I like that idea. And then another response was, Before the Lost City is an absolute classic. You can drive them right into the action. No faffing about looking for the adventure. But when your players shriek and wail and gnash their teeth, when you bring up Thaco, just remind them it's only subtraction. It truly isn't hard at all. It really isn't. It really isn't. All right. Would you let someone make a backstab attack if a fight was already broken out? Do you think a thief can still sneak around to backstab that orc even after the fighter is bonked it on the head? I don't like backstabbing. I don't like strike from behind. Grotesque imbalance. That's a really specialized ability that really I believe can break a game. Okay, General Melee. Four orc guards commanded by an ogre. Or, I don't care, troll. What? No, we'll go with an ogre. And the generalized fighting breaks out with your party of 6. Do you let the person capable of doing a backstab make one? Well, I can't say no and I can't say yes as being either one being an absolute. I can say it would depend on the circumstances and it would depend on some good die rolls and the kind that aren't necessarily in a book. And that require the DM to make a ruling on the fly. Okay, says the person capable of making the backstab, I'm going to try to get around the group and be able to perform this heinous thing. And so you as the DM got to assess, all right, what are the odds? Oh, pardon me just a minute. Blood sugar's dropping. What are the odds of being able to get across the room, around everything, and being able to do it? And so you come up with a number and say, roll 20, tell me what you come up with. They make the roll. Okay, keep going. Now comes the crucial part. They're, next to the pillar that they got to jump over to, the other pillar so they can do anyway. Okay, you compute the odds. Give me a roll. They make it, fine. Then they can do their backstab and see if they hit. Of course, it's a lot easier stabbing somebody in the back when they don't see it, yeah. But it's not just an automatic. Not just an automatic. Not in a melee. Not when combat's already started. Capable of doing it, there's a possibility. But it's all got to line up pretty right. It's got to work out pretty well. Let's see, next. Oh, did I miss something? No, that's what I started with. Okay. The giant, yada yada, I mentioned this week is not a character, it's just a series of numbers. The player cares less about the totality of the numbers represented and more about what each does for the player, typical power game mentality. If GMs allowed it, power gamers would just write a bunch of numbers on a page and cover it in a paper-thin backstory, if at all. If all the players and the GM discuss this and agree this is how they want to play, all power to them. If not, hopefully this example will prompt GMs to insist on a session 0, and during it agree on whether the piece of paper is a character sheet, or a stat sheet. And then directed to me, we may not agree on all things outside the tabletop gaming world, but Giant, thanks for sharing the history as well as your impressions and conjectures of early D&D May you continue to roll 20s. Well, thank you. Would I ever publish Macanda? Well, I have no reason not to, except that I would need an amanuensis, a secretary, because the story of Macanda is scattered all over several different adventures and modules that I wrote back in, say from 2006 on. The bits and pieces dropped here and there. And I need somebody to sit down with me and their fingers on the keyboard as I conjecture, restructure, and regroup. Did I like Gamma World? Yes, I did. I did. However, not as much as MA. Okay. Simply because I played MA first. I'm not necessarily a sci-fi guy, but I enjoyed that. Now, today, I would play Mutant Crawl Classic in a heartbeat if I had a good DM running it. Okay, time for a personal rant. The state of newspapers in the United States today. They wonder why they're decreasing. Well, I understand. Less advertising, less people reading them. One of the reasons less people are reading them is because you're not getting them delivered. I had the misfortune of having a Gannett newspaper in town, the Cincinnati Enquirer. When I have not gotten a paper and called, I've gotten a young man in Manila. I've even been told which building on which corner intersection in Manila it is. I knew it was in the Philippines as soon as I started talking. I spent some time there during the war. You get nowhere with that. Nowhere. Because nobody will bring out a paper later. You just shit out of luck on the paper. For a while they were telling me, oh, we'll issue a credit for that. Well, I don't think I ever saw a damn credit. Now, I have a new carrier. And I like this guy because the very first day he took over the route, he had a full-page handwritten letter in there. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I gave us his phone number and everything. Call me if there's any problems. Now, to my mind, that's not the letter from a con artist or a crook. Now, let me say something here. I've been in and out of the newspaper business for over 65 years. Yes, I know. I was carrying papers, canvas bag, over the shoulder, etc., when I was about 8 or 9. And I have delivered on a motor route. I have been the person that assembles the bundles. I've been the person who counts the papers that go into the bundles. And I have been the person who delivered misses, what we called misses back then, at the end of, late on Sunday morning. Because I only worked weekends. But what I'm saying is, and I've worked on newspapers, real newspapers. So I pretty well know the newspaper business. And what I can't understand is why no one will call me back. I have called and called and called and called the individual who coordinates all the carriers. When that person failed to call me back, I called the people editor and said, hey, I'm a people. This person won't get it back to me. I'm trying to find out what's going on. It seems that they can't count at where the secret distribution center is, that no carrier is allowed under penalty of, death or castration or whatever, to reveal. And I understand. This individual starts his route on the east side of the city, a good distance from me. I'm literally on the end of the route. So when he gets shorted, me and however many other people out here in this part of the other side of the city in the north, we all don't get a paper. And nobody comes out to bring you one later. And there's nobody to answer the phone to complain about it. And I'm now told, not only do the carriers get paid pennies per copy that they deliver, if you call the newspaper to, register a complaint, I'm amiss, I didn't get my paper, they get back charged $8? If they get back charged anything at all, it shouldn't be $8. That's ludicrous. That's what they make it's about what they make on a subscriber for a month. It's ludicrous. Nobody calls back. Now, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. This is the same organization that owns USA Today, the Gannett Group. Miserable excuse for a newspaper when you can't even talk to anybody to find out why you're not getting the newspaper that you paid for. I intend to take this to them also. Just thought I'd share a few of my thoughts with you first. Not that it had anything to do with gaming, but I feel better now. I don't have a whole lot more to go. It's hotter than hell outside and colder than hell down here in the cellar. I got my sweater. Right? Next week, I'm liable to have an entirely different head cover on. Not sure yet. I guess that's all I got. And I'll hear from you later, I hope. Do-da-da-go-y. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.